to the Ground Zero Podcast.
So if you're 5'3" and 300 pounds, taxes should not be paying for your bag of fudge rounds.
They sure shouldn't.
Look, that is the GOAT lyric, in my opinion.
Doesn't that restore a little bit of your faith in humanity? It does mine.
The greatest of all times.
I get so pumped to see that guy's following now, and to see that because there's not a better blue collar song out there.
Not right now.
That thing is busting, son.
It's good.
I'm obsessed with it.
I listened to it about 4 times today. And
That's
if y'all
it?
don't know what we're talking about, this is Oliver Anthony, old boy from Northern Virginia, I guess, in the woods.
I believe so.
And that's that song, Rich Men North of Richmond, which is basically talking about the politicians in D.C. north of Richmond, Virginia. And anyways, I've been enjoying that song.
You and me both.
So
You and me both.
I won't share all the lyrics. It's a little tough, but it's good. It's good. I tell you what, though, I was talking to a friend of mine today who's a songwriter, and we were both talking about it, and then he was talking about a song he was working on right now, and I was just sharing with him. I'm like, the thing is right now people just are hungry for authentic truth, just real,
for sure.
with all the bull crap we see in the country and in the world. So
That's I'll tell you something funny. Hopefully we don't get too far off of a tangent. If we do, it happens. So we were talking about the whole controversy around Jason Aldean's song.
Mm-hmm.
So me and my wife were talking. I'm already regretting getting into this. I don't want to throw. I'm not trying to throw shade at her, buddy.
No, here we go.
But we were just talking about. I was like, well, a lot of those guys, they don't even write their own music. So it's like, it's kind of bad that he's got to take the rap for it. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, most of those big time, strongest air quotes you could ever throw up country artists.
Right.
Cause they're just faces. They're
Right.
not the artist. I mean, they have the voice, but that's it. I was like, they don't write their own music. She was like, are you sure? And I was like, sweetheart, I'm positive. And I was like, because a lot of his songs are songs that Brantley Gilbert used to sing and stuff like that. And then
Right.
she was like, I don't believe you. And I was like, perfect. Because usually she'll fact check me, and she usually catches me. And but we looked it up, and it's something like Jason Aldean hasn't written one of his songs that he's recorded since 2009. It is 2023, and this dude's still on top of the charts.
Yeah. Well, Michael Bolton.
Hey. Happens,
Sing
bud.
everybody else's stuff.
Well, then he's got to feel the burn for a song that those guys wrote, but he also, at the same time, because of the revolt on it so hard, that he also gets that #1
Yeah.
hit.
Yeah.
It's a crazy deal,
Yeah.
that whole thing going on in Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, it's a different place than it used to be.
Yeah, it's weird.
So,
It's cool, but it's weird.
yeah, it's different. All right. Well, we don't want to shoot the bull too much on this one, because we got our work cut out for us tonight.
Yeah.
So, literally and figuratively, and that'll make sense. No pun intended. It'll make sense as we get going. But we are in the 4th episode of the series called Taking Steps, where we're taking a look at the 12 steps of recovery. And we're looking at them from a biblical perspective, along with just the some of the things that you've learned along the way in meetings and in working the steps, and I guess things that I've learned in ministry that kind of coincide,
Right.
not just in ministry, but just in life that coincide with the steps. And so I really encourage you, if this is your first episode, if you're tuning in for the first time, definitely listen to this one. But go back and take a listen to the first 3 episodes. We're doing these in sets of 3. So we had step 1, 2, and 3 in 3 episodes, and then kind of break away from it for a little bit, get into some other things that we've been doing on the podcast, and then come back. So we're going to be going through step 4 tonight. We'll get into step 5 and step 6 in the following weeks. And while we're doing that, why don't we just go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and read those first 3 steps. We kind of get us as a recap up to where we are now. And so those steps are: step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So tonight we're going to jump into step 4, which is...
we made a searching and fearless inventory of ourselves.
Right. A searching and fearless... well, it says moral in there too.
Didn't I say that?
No,
Did I not?
You tried, but...
That's what I meant to say.
That's good. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And I'll be honest, when I first read this step, as because we're thinking about these podcast episodes, we're trying to put a lot of effort into them, and so there's a lot of time that we spend just talking some stuff out. And when I first read it, I'm like, well, writing down some inventory of stuff, that's like, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah. I remember the first time. Obviously, I've referred to it a few times when I was in rehab and I looked at the steps on the wall. I looked at this step and I was just like, so easy. Well, then you get clean and you start working steps with your sponsor and start talking to other addicts, and you realize this step is a bear. Like it's one of the it's people are afraid of this one.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, for the obvious and not obvious reasons, because this is like your first opportunity, because you've made the admittance, you're trying to turn your will and over to God, and like that's all things that are, I mean, they're not easy to do, but this is the first time you're taking that real deep inward look at self.
Right. Well, yeah, because up to this point, as you're working these steps, 1 through 3 are almost more like, for a Bible word, it's more like revelation.
Yeah.
It's you realizing, okay, my life's unmanageable.
Yes.
I'm out of control.
Uh-huh.
And then gaining the understanding that a power greater than yourself, something other than me, has the answer to this.
Right.
Right. And then turning your will over, making the decision to turn your will over to God as you understand him. Those are all, I mean, I guess step 3 is the first decision that you make.
Yeah.
In recovery. It's the first recovery decision of, okay, I'm going to take my will and turn it over to God. But with step 4, and the more that I dove into this and some stuff that you sent me to read up on, which was awesome, and we're going to get into some of that tonight. But when I started really digging deeper, it's like, so this is where we really start putting in the work.
Right. It's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. This is where, I'm now, well, I guess before I get too far ahead of myself, as far as what you do, let me read it again. And then why don't, Cooper, you tell me what's first things we're about to do as the person working this step. What are we doing first? So again, it says, we made a searching and fearless, and those words are important. We'll talk about that for sure.
Yeah.
But we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So what are we about to do? How do we start this?
You're about to start really taking a look at like what makes you tick, and what the real root of all your, especially as far as addiction goes. You're about to take a look. You're about to stare your devil right in the face and take a real look at why you are using and why you are in such a miserable place, and really kind of try to figure out where that self-loathing is coming from. And man, that's why those words searching and fearless, right? And we're not to get ahead, but like the word fearless is so important, because like you're literally about to make this list, like no one is going to read it.
Right.
That's the only way this works. And like
Right.
the thing that's funny about this one is that, you know, like a lot of people work 1 through 3 and they don't stick around.
Right.
It's 4. This is the glue step. This is where you really like if you work a thorough 4th step, you really are catapulting yourself into a different margin of success as far
Right.
as recovery. And if you want to look at this as from Christianity, this is where you start to take a real look at the root of that sin that you have
Right.
in your life.
Yep.
And then you're hitting another level. Like especially because 1 through 3 is great. Like obviously you have that and those are maintenance steps as well. You have to do that every day, but you will plateau there
Right.
if that is all you're doing.
Right.
This is like we're now the work is starting.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot of fear and excitement going into that.
Yeah. Well, and you can. So we were talking earlier in the week, and you confirmed kind of my thoughts about this, thinking about because basically, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make a list of our junk.
Yeah.
Right? We're about to make a list, our moral inventory. So to just break that down into simple terms, we're about to make a list of all the crap.
Yeah.
Right? Crap that you feel, crap that you've done. We're about to get into that. And, I said to you, and like I said, you confirmed it to me that I would bet that in the meetings that this is where you lose the most people.
Yeah, this is the beast.
Yeah.
This is the beast. Once you get over this one, the rest of them, obviously, when we get farther into the steps, like 6 and 7, like there's some really hard stuff to deal with in 6 and 7, and obviously 5 is reading this to a sponsor or to another human being, but there's some meat in this one, and I'll go ahead and I've got like the assignment that I did for my last 4th step and what my guys are doing on their 4th steps.
Go ahead.
Just so you have an idea before we really do a deep dive on it. So when you're making this list, you start with resentments and why. And that can be, and the thing about that is, and that I didn't know, and luckily my first sponsor told me this, that it's about all the people you resent and why you resent them, but you also have to take a look at yourself and what you resent about yourself. That's a big one.
Sure.
Because if we don't take a look at that, then that takes that accountability level out of it, right? Because how easy is it to sit there and pick apart everybody else? Well, they did this and they did that, but what was my part? And that's a big part of this, especially in the 12 steps in recovery. Is you have to be willing to look at your part in it, or you're never going to grow.
Right. 100%.
Which you start gaining a lot of traction here with that. What are my fears? Do I have any deep, dark secrets? What is my unhealthy sexual activity? Have I done any harm in my relationships? If so, what?
As if there's a question there. Or
Yeah.
as if that's,
Yeah.
it's
Right. If so, what? Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, right? It's yes, I have. But
well, it's just,
yeah.
well, I'm just thinking from personal experience. I mean, as far as have I harmed anybody in the relationships? I mean, that, anyways.
Yeah.
We've all, walking through this, we've all been there.
Yeah. What are my defects and how do they affect me? And then you get into what are my assets? Right. So at least at the end you got this little silver lining that you get to take a look at your assets. But man, and this is how you get into the rest of the steps too, because this is where you pick up on your defects and your assets for the following steps. And this is a pretty the first step you work usually isn't this abbreviated. There's usually guidance into deeper questions about because obviously for me I've worked that thorough 4th step before, so I would look at this and I would apply it the same way because I already know I know the stuff that I have to write down,
Right.
especially from working them before. But man, that's the last thing you really want to do is start writing down deep dark secrets and resentments and why I resent myself and relationships and childhood trauma and.
Well, and that's why this one's so big. I mean, you are maybe for the first time taking the inward look at, okay, on the surface, what are the things, what's the obvious things, right? What are the things that I'm doing? What are the behaviors that I have that are counterproductive to my life? What choices am I making, right? What drugs am I doing? What and then from there though, like getting down into the roots of why do I have these resentments?
Yeah.
What's the cause of these resentments? And one of the things about that is, I have mixed feelings when it comes to modern counseling techniques. Because there's this thing that people sometimes get into where they look at their past so much that they never move forward, right?
Yeah.
And you can spend forever gazing into your past and never go anywhere. But that's not what this is. With this is pretty much, this is you finally owning some stuff.
Yeah.
Owning it, and then let's do the work. Let's figure this crap out.
Yeah.
Why do I feel the way I do? Why am I the way that I am?
Right.
And there's going to be some things that you're going to discover are things maybe that happened to you.
Yeah.
Things done to you. But it's not ever going to only be things done to you and things happen to you. It's also going to be where was I at fault in beginning down a path on certain things too.
Yeah, and I think, and I like how you put that too, because I think that is very true about only wanting to look at the past. But the cool thing about this is like obviously you have to dig that up,
Right.
but it's also talking about your current feelings. It's not
Right.
just like let's validate our past and we feel bad because of this, this, and this. Well,
Right.
now it's like why do I feel this way, and this is what I have to do in order to move forward.
Right. Yeah, because the last thing we want to do is get stuck with a crutch
Yeah,
of I'll never be able to be clean because of blah blah blah. from
Yeah,
my past,
dude.
Right. And that just becomes a crutch. That just becomes a lie.
I don't want to do those
You know.
meetings, or I don't want to do those steps because of Don't get me
that's
started.
The stuff. Well, but that's the stuff the
Yeah.
enemy's going to whisper in your
Oh,
ear.
for sure.
And if you're not, but this again is why with this step, if you're not willing to take the deep dive, and I guess, well, tell me if I'm wrong here too. When you've come to this step, you probably should have already done this before now, but you need a sponsor.
Oh, you're not working steps without a sponsor,
Right.
Bubba. Yeah.
Right.
No way.
Right.
And if you think you are, you're
Right. When I think that's important to say.
you're wrong. Yeah.
Because I think that it's human nature for us to try to take the shortcut.
For sure.
To try to cut corners, try to take the shortcut, and look, it would be natural that when you've struggled with the things you struggle with as someone who struggles with addiction, it's hard to trust someone and be vulnerable.
For sure.
That is a difficult thing. Why?
sure.
Because if you've gotten pretty deep into addiction, well, then you've also had people take advantage of you.
100%.
And on all kinds of different levels. You know what I mean? So, like, it's not the easiest thing. And, like, when you hear us talking about it, like, this ain't easy.
No.
But
no.
there's a saying, you got to choose your hard. Choose your hard. Is it going to be hard to dig into your past, your current, and resolve those things so you can move into your future? Yeah, it's going to be hard.
Oh yeah.
But that life that you have when you're locked up in addiction, that's hard.
Way harder.
You know what I mean? So
Way
you
harder.
got to choose your hard.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, and you kind of touched on it when you said it a minute ago, is like obviously we have a hard time, especially as addicts or people that have gone through hardships, of getting taken advantage of. So our trust really isn't there.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about this step and getting into the fifth is that this is like with your sponsor, this is next level trust. That you don't have to work this with your sponsor. It's recommended that way, but you don't have to. It's just to another person. But this is like if you do work it with your sponsor, that's a next level of trust.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because you were literally about to tell somebody the deepest, darkest corners. Like there's stuff that like I've shared in a fourth step before that that up until like until years later, till my walk with the Lord has gotten better, that I've been open to talk about. But like the first few years I was clean, the only people that knew about that was my sponsor and God.
Right.
Because that was the only two. That was it. That
Yeah.
was all I was. Those were the only things I was willing to talk about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Let me real quick to get into some just real quick scripture. The first one that really goes along with this step, it's Lamentations 3:40, and it's pretty short. It just says, "Let us test and examine our ways, and let us turn back to the Lord."
Yeah.
Because that's what we're doing here. You know, we are recognizing the things that are the catalysts to have gotten us into this place of addiction, into the mindset that we have, into the lack of trust, into all those things. And so now it's time to take the deep dive.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm gonna kind of walk through a little bit of some of this literature you sent me, if that's cool.
Yeah, that's perfect.
The first thing you talked about was resentments,
Yes.
and you know, in this, it's sharing kind of four main things to look at with the resentments, and so one is list the people, organizations, and concepts that you resent. List the people, organizations, and concepts that you resent. So this is just getting to bare bones. It's who in your life do you have bitterness towards?
Yeah.
Right. Who has done something, or maybe not, but that you have resentment towards. Resentment can be jealousy as well.
Yeah.
You know, it can be all kinds of things. What organizations? I mean, so what happened in school that really, you know, or that ball team that you tried out for?
100%.
Or,
yeah.
You know, that job that you had.
Bro, it's crazy because you start writing on those and it starts opening up things that you never knew really affected you.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Dude, it's mind blowing, really. And that's the thing. And like, we talk about it a lot, but that's why it's so important to have a sponsor. But two, it's so important to do these steps because putting that actual act of putting pen to paper, man.
Yeah.
There is no substitution for that.
Yeah.
There is none.
Yeah.
Right, because you can sit there and make your mental note and all that, and like, oh yeah, well I'm doing this or I'm doing that. When you start putting that pen to paper, buddy, it's real.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Yeah, it is. Well, and it's super therapeutic too.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure,
really
man.
is.
Especially you start getting into those resentments, man. That's like, and sometimes you'll write, like I've written them down and I've laughed at them because I'm just like, that is so dumb.
Right.
It's so dumb.
Sure.
But then I've written some down and I'm just like, I never knew the way that it affected me. And there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah. Well, look, so one of the episodes that just dropped recently, I mean, I was sharing my testimony of how, you know, as a youth in a church, I experienced a rejection.
Yeah.
You know, as I was, you know, felt called to leadership and called to leading worship and basically I was told, look, man, we don't need you no more.
Yeah.
You know, and this is as a young person, and I took that rejection and just like anybody working these steps, I had to go through a process of the Lord revealing to me, here's the root of why you've always felt like you got to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Is this rejection.
Right.
And that's, you know, that's the same thing here. Even like, and it says concepts. I mean, how many people have experienced racism, have experienced just injustice,
Yeah.
have experienced maybe being looked down because of social class, like being poor. You grow up in the trailer park and you were looked at a certain way, and then you resent certain people, and then you hold on to this stuff and it boils up on the inside of you.
For sure.
Then you find yourself almost basically having a complex whenever anybody says anything that makes it even slightly feel like they're looking down on you, you know, and then you're reacting to that and all this kind of stuff. Like it adds up and builds up.
Well, it just gives you it just cosigns that complete crap belief, especially that you have when you're using, but like even through seasons in recovery where you just don't feel like you're at your best, where like you just feel like you deserve that, like you feel like you deserve dirt,
Right.
And
Right.
so like if you're not willing to take a look at this, then you're going to continue to feel that way.
Right. So then it goes on to say that, once you've made that list the cause or causes of each resentment, which we've kind of touched on.
Right.
Actually, if you resent this person, why? Write it down. Why do you resent this person?
Yeah.
Because one, you might for the first time on paper be verbalizing something that you feel that you've never really understood. You know what I mean? Or never really.
Yeah.
Or, like you said, you're going to realize, man, that's kind of dumb.
Or sometimes you'll write somebody down. You're like, I don't even really have a reason for
Right.
that. Like,
Yeah.
you just write this person down. Like say it's just somebody from high school that you like, you know what? Screw that dude. And now you're actually looking at it, and you're like, why did I ever feel that way in the first
Yeah.
place? I'm such an idiot.
Who cares?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many things.
That's why I've been sitting over here smirking and laughing this whole time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm 41 now, and I think about some of the stuff in high school, and it's just like,
Oh my gosh, man.
well, like, who cares?
So dumb.
It's so dumb.
So dumb.
Okay, and so then the next part, it says, with each resentment, we try to see where we were wrong and what part we played in the situation. Now, I really like that.
Oh, yeah.
Because one of the most important things about doing inventory is taking ownership.
100%.
It's so important. Like, yeah, you're going to list something or somebody or an organization that you feel like slighted you, did you wrong, did something to cause you a resentment. But it's always a two-way street, man.
Yeah.
Everything is a two-way street. And so now that you got that on the table, hey, these are the kind of things that bother me. Now, where did you play a role?
Uh-huh.
What did you do to play a part in it? It's just important to take ownership of stuff.
No, for sure.
Okay, and then the last part of that one in resentments, situations in which we are sure we are right require close observation and discussion with our sponsor. Right? So just because you think you're right don't mean you are.
Boy, I'm gonna tell you what. Right now, I can hear G's voice in my head right now. I'll never forget this time he looked at me. And this was before he was my sponsor. When I worked the fourth step and I was all tuned up, and I looked at him like I deserved something. You know what I'm saying? He's like,
Right.
I'm not going to say the exact words that he said to me because it's probably not super kosher, but he said, "Congratulations, son. You're leading a normal life and contributing to society. Billions of people do that every day. If you want a cookie, you need to go somewhere else."
Right.
Because when we go through stuff like this, like even like, and that's the thing in my life. Like I have overcome, yes, like heroin addiction and all these horrible things that have gone on in my life. Yeah, like it took a lot of work for me to get through, but like I made really, really poor choices and did some really, really horrible things. I don't feel like I deserve like this big coming out party and everybody just wanting to stroke my ego because like I was a scumbag and now I'm not.
Right.
And I have to remind myself of that constantly because
Sure.
a lot of people will give you your flowers. And look.
Yeah.
And look. And
There's a place for
yes,
it.
there is for
Yeah.
sure. Because if you're willing to like really do a deep dive and do that hard work on yourself,
Yeah.
hey, man, I'm proud of you and congratulations.
Right.
But now don't think you're a step ahead of the game and
Yeah.
that you're just this
Yeah,
superhero human.
I don't want to hear about you telling me how well I worked 32 hours at work this week. I'm doing everything, man. I'm over and above.
Oh, don't get me started, bro.
You're just now being normal. Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe normal is the right word.
I don't remember the last time I only worked 32
a
hours.
productive, person in society. But
Yeah, everybody wants the cookies, buddy.
yeah. Well, I mean, I love some cookies. I ain't
Hey,
gonna-
boy, I was a little upset we didn't get none of them cookies from Bake tonight. You know what I'm saying?
I knew I was gonna say something about them fudge rounds. So,
Woo!
but hey, I ain't 300 pounds, and the government ain't buying my fudge rounds.
Nah, they ain't. I'm buying my own fudge rounds,
That's right.
Jack.
My fudge rounds come out of my paycheck.
Hey, I ain't got no problem paying for them.
All right. So the second thing on the moral inventory list, which you touched on, relationships.
Yeah.
So first, list down your personal relationships, including relationships with coworkers, friends, relatives, family members, neighbors, etc. And then, so there's some questions it says to ask yourselves. When was I intolerant of others? When did I feel superior to others? How did I use and abuse other people? And in what ways did I try to make other people feel worthless? Wow.
Boy, if you thought you was just going to write 1 or 2 pages on this Joker,
Right?
you were wrong,
Right.
Jack. And that's what I was saying when I read like what I've done for my past 4th step and what my guys are doing. Is like you do it this way, the way that we're reading on it right now. You understand that that's the way you're supposed to do it from then on out, so you don't have to go into this lengthy thing anymore. Right. But man, there's a lot there.
Well, okay, the more we do the podcast, the more comfortable I get, right? And I mean, I'm not usually one to parse words a whole lot, but I try to be sensitive. You know, you can always tell when I'm trying to be careful with what I say because I kind of around a lot.
Yeah,
but
me too.
But as I'm reading this, okay, and here's what's coming to me right now, and so let me just throw it out there. But I remember when I was probably a little over 20 years younger than I am right now, and being in a relationship with someone who really struggled with addiction. And one of the things that at that time I had a hard time wrapping my head around is they would always tell me how their addiction wasn't as bad as so-and-so's addiction.
Woo.
Because they did X, Y, and Z, right? So, like...
differences instead of similarities.
And it was so weird to me because from someone who at that point had very little exposure to addiction at all.
Yeah.
Very little exposure to drugs. I couldn't get my head around how someone who is smoking crack is better than someone who shoots up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I heard it all the time, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
But, that's part of that delusion that you're in. But as I'm reading these, working, about working this step, it makes sense why they're talking about this way.
Oh, for sure.
Because, when did I feel superior to others? How did I use and abuse other people? And in what ways did I try to make other people feel worthless? And I remember, so we're coming from 2 different vantage points, right? I mean, I never got grabbed by addiction. I've never done any drugs, just to be honest and clear, and never got grabbed by any of that. I've had plenty of sin in my life and plenty of other things that I've had addiction issues with that this is even speaking and helping me with
100%.
Stuff in my heart now. But at that time, having never been touched by any of that, I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand.
For sure.
Whenever this person was like, they'd go on a binge, right? And because we were in a relationship, so they'd go on a binge. I wouldn't know where they're at. They'd come back, and the rage that they would have towards me and the things they would say to me, and I'm just like, I'm not the one doing this right now. I'm not, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's not fun.
No. Well, no, and that's the manipulation part.
Yeah.
Especially I mean, but nobody likes coming down.
Well, right. I mean, and they even explained to me because look, and I mean, let's just be honest. Let's be forthright with it all. If you've ever been through this personally, you yourself, or if you've been in a relationship with people going through this, like what this person would tell me based on the drug they did when they came down, because I guess this drug really eats at your bones. And when they were coming down, they say it's the most painful thing in life. Like, that's what they would share with me. They're like, you're in such a rage because, I mean, one, the dope's leaving your body, right? You're losing the high, but also like your body's having this horrible reaction.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it brings out the worst.
Yeah, no, that withdrawal from anything's a bear.
Yeah.
And then of course, like you can't. It's hard to hide when you get bad off enough. It's hard to hide that withdrawal.
Right.
So of course you're trying to manipulate and scam the system into like, because you pretty much know you're caught. Like when you're going
Right.
through that for the umpteenth time, you don't have the flu again.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Everybody's gonna quit believing that. So then you
Right.
start throwing other people under the bus. You start trying to scam the system or whatever. You're like, well, I'm not them, and I don't do this, and I don't do that, and I don't sell this for my drug, and I don't. You know what I'm saying? So. And that's 100%. Like, if this is your first fourth step, that's 100% of what you're hitting on, and like also some of the other stuff that you did maybe before you were using when you were
Right.
younger. But then you want to talk about pain? Work this after you've been clean for a little while, and you ain't got nothing to blame it on.
Right. Well,
Whoa.
I've shared that with you before.
Yeah.
You know, so over the years, when I was pastoring and just ministering to people or counseling people who struggle with addiction, one of the things they will always say once they've started on the path of being clean and they're kind of having to face things for the
Yeah.
first time, you know, they would always say, I've never had to deal with this. Like whatever this emotional thing that I've
It's
got
emotions,
going on,
100%. Yeah.
I've never had to deal with it because I used so that I wouldn't have to deal with it.
Oh, for sure,
you know?
yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my escape. I didn't
Uh-huh.
want to face this pain, and so I used, and now actually having to face it can be really overwhelming.
Oh, you're getting hit in the mouth right now.
Right. Yeah.
That's the thing about this. It's like it's because you're not only are you facing it, but you're getting smacked in the face.
Right.
And this is the first time you've really, really gotten punched
Yeah.
since you got there.
Well, see, and we're pointing that stuff out because if you're listening to this and you're right in the middle of this, like, be encouraged. Be encouraged. You're not alone. You're not
Yeah.
alone. This is part of the process. Just stick with it.
Bro, I remember writing my first fourth step and just sitting there thinking, like, gosh, is it like how much more do I need to write, and when is this going to be over?
Right.
You know, because it was so hard. It was so hard to sit there and and especially if you're really trying to work a thorough program. I knew I needed to work a thorough program or else I was going to die. Like, that was just my mentality. And so I was like, I don't have, which I'm pretty good at in life, like at being vigilant and like not giving myself an option. Like, so to me, like this step, when I first started working, I was like, I don't have an option. This is it. I have to stay with it. And I just remember sitting there and writing on some of the stuff and just being like, oh my gosh, and just crying over it.
Yeah.
So I was just like, this is a lot of freaking pain, man.
Yeah.
And it is, and it says in our literature too about it is also, while it is so painful, it is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
And like, it does not, I mean, obviously it does not feel that way when you are doing it, because it is
Right.
it's because sometimes it feels like death by 1,000 cuts.
Right.
But then you've taken a look at it, you've voiced it, it's out there, it's real, you put it on paper, and now you're able to take a hard look at it. And the hope is to not let it happen again.
Right. Right. So the second part of listing our personal relationships, it says list your sexual relationships, and this may include deep relationships or short affairs, spouses, lovers, or others. And there's questions that, you know, we have here that you want to ask yourself about these relationships.
Yeah.
And those questions are: did I manipulate and lie to meet my own needs? Did I care about the other person? How did I demonstrate that? Did I feel better or less worthy than my partner? How did my dependencies cause me to compromise myself? How often did I say yes when I wanted to say no, and why? Did I end up feeling worthless, used, or abused? Did I think that sex would fix me and make everything all right? Did my relationships end in pain and unhappiness for myself or others? What kind of partner did I choose to be with in my disease? Is that still true today? That's a good one.
Whoa.
Was sex something traded or sold? Where was I dishonest in my relationships? And the last one, when did I meet my own sexual needs at someone else's expense? I mean,
Well, that's deep.
I mean, that's getting to some hard questions to answer.
Yeah. No, it is.
That's tough.
And but those are things you have to take a look at.
Yeah.
Like, especially for me, when I first got clean too, it was like I was willing to, because like I had that big aha, like baptismal moment in rehab. And then like I got home, and you know, like many times when we're in a protected place, like using youth camp as an example,
Right.
but you get back out into the real world and stuff starts hitting you, and I'm like I've put some muscle mass back on, like I feel better, I look better, and then I just started getting the attention of women, and it was on, son.
Right.
And I was just filling a void just as hard as I possibly could. And like I had to take a look at some of that stuff, dude, and that is a painful freaking area, man.
Yeah, because I mean, here you're taking inventory of like how you've manipulated people to satisfy your own needs, how you may have been manipulated, you know, and
for
abused,
sure.
Which is a hard thing to look at. You know, did I end up feeling worthless, used, or abused? I mean, man, that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and as hard as it is to write on a lot of that stuff, and as ashamed as we possibly ever could be, when you go over this with somebody that is caring and loving, such as a sponsor, like I just remember being so nervous to talk about some of the stuff that was on that sheet with my sponsor, and like some of the stuff and the love that I received when I shared that with him, and the reception of it, and he's like, man, hey, me too, me too. He's like, is it right? No. But he's like, but here we have the opportunity to grow from this.
Right. And that's the thing, like as you heard me reading those questions, be honest, be truthful, you know, go through those questions yourself and be honest about it. 'Cause that's the only way you're going to get past this stuff.
For sure.
Know? That's it. So this is, I mean, you know, whenever you get into sexual relationships, because, you know, scripturally, you know, whenever you have sex with somebody, you're making a soul tie.
Yeah.
And you're bound together. And in society, when we have many partners, and you know, we end up binding ourselves to people, and then it's like if you took a piece of paper and you took two pieces of paper and you super glued them together, but then you try to tear them back apart, you're going to be missing parts of you, or you're going to have parts of them. And the more and more you do that, you're going to be just this torn up individual.
Yeah, shell.
And so now, you know, you're facing some of this, and I just want to encourage you, do the deep dive, be vulnerable with it, be honest, but also know that you're not the first one to have done whatever it is you've done, or to have experienced whatever it is you've experienced. And we don't say that to say, look, get over it. That's not what we're saying.
No.
It's just, there's nothing that you've done that someone hasn't overcome.
Right. And I'm glad that we're touching on that too, because I feel like a lot of times, you know, especially in like a Christian based format, that like that's something that would kind of be jumped over, because that's like now you're mucking it up, you're muddying the waters there.
Yeah.
But like, man, it's real.
Yeah.
That's very real, and it's very deep, and it's very hard to talk about, but we have to talk about it.
Right.
And you know, and to be able to sit here and to know like the amount of sexual immorality that I went through, in order to take a look at it, and then to grow from it, in order to have a healthy sexual relationship with a wife now.
Yeah.
Like that was huge. That was huge, because I would have never had the opportunity to do that, because I would have constantly tried to fill the void with the next best thing and do this whole grass is greener on the other side thing, and like no amount of sex would have ever been good enough.
Right.
Until I was willing to do this.
Right. That's right. So then the third part of this, it says that with each relationship that you listed in those first two sections, summarize how it affected you and try to identify what character defects were apparent. And let me kind of read, because it's written really well. Let me read the rest of what it says here. Many of our character defects damaged our personal relationships. As addicts, our emotions often run to extremes, past the point of what is appropriate. Writing our inventory helps us to see where our addiction played an important role in our dealings with people, places, and things. And so I feel like what is getting identified is we're not talking about the drug right now that was your drug of choice. We're talking about the beast that is addiction and how it has impacted your life, starting to realize in all these relationships that spirit of addiction has been playing a huge role in why things have been turning out the way it has.
Yeah.
All right, so the third one, and this podcast is probably gonna, this one's gonna take a while. I know we're gonna have two parts now. I can tell you right now. That's okay. That's
yeah,
okay.
Dude, I love it. This is awesome.
So the third, we've talked about resentments, we've talked about relationships. The third big piece of this is self-obsession and self-centeredness.
Ka-chow. Boy, ain't nobody deals with that. You? That's not a problem in my life at all, yeah?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm going to be honest with you. It's. I feel like in our culture in general, though, it's worse now than it's ever been.
It is. It is with social media and all that.
It's the narcissism. We throw around those words a lot, and we like to label people as narcissists. But the narcissism in our culture is
next level.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know it's never been like this in America. I mean, I don't know all of history and whatever, but we've never had the technology that we have now.
Forward-facing cameras on cell phones.
Yeah, and I mean the ability to see your own image
all the time,
like Narcissus looking in the in the water.
Yeah. I had a 7th grade teacher made me read that story when I was.
Well, it was important.
Yeah, it was.
But
Hurt my
man,
feelings.
It's gross how much, and this is a thing, even for someone who really isn't narcissistic, we still have to look at ourselves and recognize some of these tendencies because it's so prevalent in our culture.
Oh my gosh, man.
That we're so focused on self. I mean,
dude, that is when I first got clean, like you walk into a meeting and you see like the different IPs, like the different pamphlets that you can get, and they're free. You take as many as you want. And I just remember somebody looking at me, and there's one that we have in the fellowship that I'm in, and it is the Triangle of Self-Obsession.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the very first ones. When you get a sponsor, usually you start with like something simple in the literature, and then that was one of the first things. He's like, "Oh yeah, you need to do this one."
Yeah.
I was like, "What are you trying to say?" He's like, "Just read the pamphlet, and you'll understand what I'm telling you."
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, we're so self-centered. Our whole culture in the West is so self-absorbed.
My gosh.
I mean, it's likes, it's followers, it's selfish ambitions, it's duck lips, it's
angel wing portraits on buildings.
I mean, my God, if you can't look at anything social media without seeing 10 girls in the gym doing the picture, looking at their behind, and it's just like, what are we doing?
The same thing with dudes, shirts off, flexing in the mirror.
What are we doing? I'm gonna wear my real short gray sweat shorts while I'm flexing everything. Dude, it's bad, man. There's days where I wish we could get rid of all the all the social media. I mean, there's good, that comes from it, but my gosh, I don't know that the good outweighs the bad.
I don't think so either. I think the ability to convey information is good as long as the information is good.
which you can't guarantee that.
No.
You know,
No, not at all. And it's funny that you said that about the gym, and this is just quick. But when I first started powerlifting after I got clean, it was like a bunch of big, strong dudes getting together to lift weights, and it wasn't like we weren't filming every set. Like obviously we did some, and I've got posts on my Instagram right now of that kind of thing.
Sure.
But man, it wasn't an everyday thing. Like there's guys that like they're not working out without like the tripod light and the camera tripod and all that stuff, dude. It is. Like you walk into a gym now and see that stuff, it makes me want to throw.
Yeah,
up.
It's so dumb.
Because we'd have laughed when it was like because like we all had like this, I don't know how else to put it, but like this kind of prison workout style mentality. Like we're throwing around rusty plates, we're banging weights, like we're getting it in. You know what I'm saying? Like we ain't got time for that.
Yeah.
And like, cause if you'd have walked in there with a tripod, we'd have laughed you up out of there.
Yeah.
And now it's like that's the most socially acceptable thing you can do is walk in there with a daggone tripod camera.
Right.
What a joke.
That's crazy, man.
Don't get me on a soapbox.
That's crazy.
I started it myself, but gosh, it drives me nuts.
Yeah. Let me I guess so we can stay on task with it.
So I don't have more people to put on my next fourth step.
let me read what this literature says about self-obsession and self-centeredness. A part of step 4 is looking at how we have been obsessed with self. Many of our feelings and even character defects stem from our total self-centeredness. We are like little kids who never grew up. Throughout our active addiction, and maybe in our clean time too, we continually have focused on our wants, our needs, our desires. We wanted everything for nothing. We weren't willing to work for what we wanted or pay the price.
Gosh.
We have found that we placed extraordinary demands on everybody and everything. We wanted people, places, and things to somehow make us happy, content, and whole. Now, in recovery, we find that only God can accomplish this task.
Bam.
I mean, it's written so good.
I mean, if that don't hit home, dude.
So it goes on. Throughout our 4th step, we've been looking at situations to see what was underlying our actions. It is also helpful to focus on the feelings. It's important that we learn to identify the feelings we may be having. We want to look words up in the dictionary so we begin to know what they mean. It's easy to say I felt bad about that, but we need to probe deeper than that and understand what the feelings are. The following is a list of words that may help you focus on feelings. Here we go. You ready?
Hit me.
Guilt.
Oof.
Resentment.
Ouch.
Confusion. Hopelessness.
Double ouch.
Arrogance. Shame. Anger. Loneliness. Failure. Inadequacy. Intolerance. Depression. Anxiety. Fear. Self-pity. Frustration. Betrayal. And denial. You know, part of why you would get into all of those feelings and why you want to be able to define them properly and understand them is there's something called emotional intelligence.
Right.
That through this step and really through recovery, the goal is that you're going to develop emotional intelligence. We can kind of get into that more later, but it's understanding the feelings that you have.
Yeah.
And being able to identify why, kind of understanding what triggers them. And then when you begin to have that understanding, you can now maybe not negate, but maybe mitigate them.
For sure.
In other words, you can find ways to cope and ways to deal with them. And once you recognize that something triggers you and you can acknowledge it for what it is. I mean, for instance, you know, if you're in a situation where, well, I'll use myself as an example, you know, when I was talking about the rejection thing, right? Once I was able, where really I felt like the Lord revealed to me and I finally understood that seed of rejection at, 18 years old had been with me so long, forever I couldn't understand why I always felt like I needed to prove something, to show my worth, to prove that I was worth a crap at anything. It took me a while to understand because I didn't have – most people who struggle with that had a father who had such high expectations that you couldn't reach them and you never felt good enough. Or even when you did great, they instead of giving you any praise, they just always focused on what you could do better.
Yeah.
And if you had that kind of father or parent, that can drive this type of mentality where you feel like you always, well, I didn't have that. My parents, I knew I was loved. I knew they never, they held standards. They told me what I could be. They, but I never felt like I needed to prove anything to them or to gain their love or anything like that. So then when the Lord really showed me it was this rejection, now I can say when somebody, like say at work, I apply for a position at work and maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe I don't get it. Now that can start to trigger some feelings in my heart and in my mind.
Yeah.
That could make me begin to kind of mentally go down a spiral that could lead to, depression or different things. But if I can recognize it, if you have the emotional intelligence to recognize it, now you can say, okay, I got a little weak spot here.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah. It's a trigger. So let's just shut that off.
For sure.
Shut that down. We're not going down that path.
I think that's so perfect because we always want to understand why we feel the way that we feel, but we never really want to get to the true root of it, like you're saying. Like we're so easy, especially like when it's just like with the job or with whether we're sports, because like that we share that background too as kids. Is like, well, I didn't make the team. It's the coach's fault, or it was daddy ball, or no, it was because I wasn't good enough, so I didn't get picked on the team. I just listened to all this crap that everybody else said and was trying to make me feel better. So then I internally thought that, and I also wasn't willing to look at the fact that I just needed to get better,
right?
Because that involves work, and I wasn't willing to do that.
Yeah. You bring that up, and it reminds me of something I'll share. Because, I've coached sports forever, I guess 20-plus years now. And last year, I was helping my buddy coach a little youth basketball team.
Oh, yeah.
And these are like 7- and 8-year-olds. And we had a good little team. We coached them up good. I think we lost one game during the regular season. So, we won our conference, if you want to call it that, our league. And then we go to the county tournament where the all-star coaches. But in this one game where it was a barn burner, there's this. They changed the rules this year to where. So in the past, and this is basketball. So this is youth basketball. In the past, like in the last 2 minutes of a half, you could press, right?
Yeah. So
you could come across half court and play defense. So that if it's a close game, you got a chance to get a steal,
right? Score.
You got a chance to come back. Well, it was a close game, but they changed the rules in the county this year that at no point during the game could you press. Okay, well, we're winning by 1 with 8 seconds left, but our kids have been. The other team's been making a comeback, and we've been helter skelter, and we get the ball, and I'm hollering, timeout. We call timeout. And my buddy, he runs the exact play that I would have run. He was the head coach, and he did the exact thing I would have done. All right, we're going to give the ball to there was about 13 seconds left. So
yeah,
we're going to give the ball to our point guard. He's going to stay behind half court until there's about 4 seconds left, and then you're going to baseball pass it towards the goal that if it goes in, we scored more, we win. But if not, it's going to hit the rim, bounce off. They're going to fumble it around. We're going to win the game. So there was 13 seconds where, in theory, if they could have pressed, they could have got a steal, scored
for sure,
and beat us.
Yeah.
Okay. So I tell all that. Now that's some gamesmanship. So but this is what was funny. After the game, the other team's best player walks up to me with this big smirk on his face, and he says, "You cheated." And I'm like, "What? You cheated?" And I'm starting to laugh a little under my breath now. I'm like, "Oh, well, how did I cheat, buddy?" "Well, you guys held the ball in the court where we couldn't get to it. You all cheated." And I'm realizing in the moment, I'm like, this poor kid's coach gave them all the excuses as to why they didn't win. And I couldn't help it. I told the little guy, I said, "No, buddy, that was good coaching.
Yeah.
Don't let us be in a position to beat you that way next time."
100%. Hey, you don't like it, don't put yourself there.
I mean, it is what it is, but
Hey.
that's what we're talking about. All right, so talking about those emotions, it says examine each of the feelings listed as well as other feelings you have identified in your inventory. So we kind of move on past that. I guess the questions are about those feelings. How did this feeling affect me? Was this feeling appropriate for the situation? Was my behavior appropriate for the situation? And what did it remind me of? Right. And these are great questions because any of us struggling with either addiction or struggling with like these triggers from trauma or whatever, whether emotional triggers or whatever, if you really do inventory, you're going to have to be honest with yourself and realize you probably made a lot of mountains out of molehills.
That's what I was getting ready to add to it too, was that buddy, that old saying, you know, and I can't stand them, but they're old sayings because they're the truth. Like feelings aren't facts,
right?
Because some of these feelings that we allow ourselves to feel are lies,
right?
And in order to realize that, this is the kind of work that we have to do,
right?
Because it's just a self manipulation,
right?
You know, and we'll get so boogered and so spun up about a feeling that's not even the truth,
right?
And like I find myself doing that still, and it's not until I recenter myself and pray or take a look at some of the work that I've done in the past on steps like this that I can finally just calm down and be like, no, I'm BSing myself and I'm spinning myself out of control for no reason at all.
Right. And that's part of that. That's part of that emotional intelligence. See, once you get to where you can identify that stuff, now you can check yourself.
Yeah,
because that's what you need to do. You need to check yourself.
Yeah, and see, that's the cool thing is there's an older member that I hang out with a lot of the time, and he's a great dude. He's actually just became my grand sponsor. But he's all.
What does that mean?
He's my sponsor.
Okay, all right. That makes sense.
Right. The first time I heard it too, I was like, "What the heck?" Because it's like you have a sponsorship family tree and all that kind of stuff, which is actually really, really cool when you get into that and you do like different men's retreats and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Which I've been super blessed to go on a lot of those. But he is so big about saying like I now have the opportunity to take a step back before I react.
Right.
Especially on a feeling that's probably crap in the first place. And he always shares it as like he's like that old person is still in me, but it's about 3 inches deeper than it used to be. So I got 3 inches of skin before you make that joker come out. And that gives me enough time to reassess and figure out. He said that gives me about 5 to 10 seconds, which is typically under the right spiritual conditioning and accountability. That's about all you need to really make a decision like, hey, this isn't the hill to die on. Right. Or this is not worth me absolutely losing my mind and making a tail out of myself for.
That's right. Well, since we're in the, basically in these last 2 sections of working this step, we're dealing with our own self-centeredness. We're also dealing with relationships and kind of looking at others and how we look at ourselves. Let me read a scripture. This is Matthew 7, verses. We're going to go 1 through 5. I don't know. We might read 6. 6 is good too. Anyways, it says, again, Matthew 7:1. It says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use it, it will be measured back to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite."
Bang.
Hand raise.
Yeah, right.
"First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck out of your brother's eye." Now, I want to point out something, okay? Because a lot of people take this verse and no other verses in the Bible, right? We like to pick and choose and cherry pick, okay? And they like to take this one and say, well, you can't judge me. You can't judge me. How are you judging me? The Bible says judge not. Okay. Well, one, the Bible doesn't tell you to worry about somebody judging you.
Bingo.
That's not what it's saying.
Missing the point,
It's
sir.
saying you need to get the log out of your own eye before, and that's what I like about it in verse 5, you hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, then you'll clearly see to take the speck out of your brother's eye.
Uh-huh.
See, here's the thing. We get offended when somebody says anything to us, but it's not that it doesn't need to be said to us.
Right.
You know,
right.
and now we want to pull the, oh, you're not supposed to judge me. Well, that's really not biblical. That's really not what it's saying here, and that's really not what the Bible teaches. I won't get into all of that right now.
But if you're one of those people and you don't know it, or if you're sitting there and wondering if you are or aren't, it's all in how you just interpreted this verse.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
Nobody should judge me. If that's
Right.
the way you feel about that, buddy, you got, hey,
Yeah, well,
grab you a mirror.
basically, if you're the person who's crying and crying about getting judged, right, you probably got a plank in your eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably do. But it says, though, that if you'll remove the plank from your own eye, you'll be able to clearly help your brother, right? We're
That's what we
supposed to
want.
help each other.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
supposed to. But you got to focus on the crap that is in you first. You need to deal with self, right? You don't need to move forward and deal with everybody else's stuff. This is that thing about owning it. And you notice, even in all this literature we're reading tonight, you're identifying things that maybe people did that hurt you, but you are taking ownership for how you responded
Right.
and how it affected your life.
That's why it all says what was my part in it through all of that. And that's the big thing about like in a meeting in the rooms, you'll hear a lot of people talking about staying in your lane and keeping your side of the street clean.
Right.
You'll hear that constantly.
Yeah.
Because that's the accountability level that you have to have in order to keep moving forward in this thing.
Right. 100%.
Because without that, you'll just sit there and just be like, well, you'll get that plum disease, that poor little old me, and why is this happening, and why are people mean to me?
So there's this, the last verse in this short passage, verse 6, I'm going to add it. It's kind of a weird verse because it's almost like it's just thrown in there,
Yeah.
almost as if it's not really part of this, but it's still really good, really important thing. And it says, do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Now, the reason I wanted to go ahead and read that verse is because, especially for someone who has battled with addiction, and as we were listing resentments, in relationships, one of the things it talked about is how we've been abused and how we've abused others. So I just want to read that scripture one more time. I'm not going to go into depth with it, but I want you, the listener, to just take a minute and really take in what it's saying. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. Okay, I'm gonna have to elaborate. I can't help it.
I was sitting there thinking on it too. It's,
Well, there are parts of yourself that are not to be given to others.
yeah,
And especially, I think that you have to, as you're doing inventory, right? There's like you said, the old sayings. There's the things your parents always tell you. You're going to be who you hang out with. You're the sum of the, or the mean of all the people, the average of, all the people that you hang out with. Bad people corrupt good morals.
right.
But they're true. They're true statements. And a lot of people's problem, especially when they're making this turn, is if you have really gotten wrapped up in addiction, then you have created a circle of people that you are around a lot
Yes.
that are really only going to tear you down.
For sure.
You know, and so this is saying, don't give what's sacred to dogs and your pearls to pigs. All right. I'm not saying these people are dogs or pigs. Maybe I am. I mean, there's plenty of them out there, but it's don't give the best of you to people who just want to do harm. You know, it says if you do, they may trample them under their feet and tear you into pieces.
Yeah.
You know, so love yourself enough. I mean, we've talked about that a lot. You know,
Yeah.
Love yourself enough not to do that, not to throw the best parts of you to people who could really give a crap.
Right, and that's the beautiful thing about this step is it'll give you that level of self-awareness too through looking at all this stuff. It'll allow you to kind of recognize when something like that is getting ready to happen, or to give you a better insight on the people you're around, in order to not just throw yourself to someone who's going to hurt you.
All right, so we'll probably for this episode we'll probably end it here. It says, with each feeling and situation, try to see where self-obsession and self-centeredness played a part. Ask these questions. In this situation, was I feeling or acting self-righteous? Did I behave selfishly? What were my expectations for myself or others? That's a big one. That's a good marital counseling step there.
Oh, for sure.
Did I insist on having things my way or become enraged when I didn't get my way? And how and how did I react to my feelings?
Oh gosh. Man, there's not a whole lot to say about that, really.
Well, I mean, there is,
but it's like,
I guess
whoa.
it gets real personal.
Yeah.
Well, the one that I was saying, you know, what were my expectations for myself or others? Now, the reason I commented about that is because, you know, we're talking about relationships in this part of the step.
Yeah.
And understanding expectations are really, really, really important.
Yeah.
Especially, hear me, ladies, especially for men. Here's why. I know that you think we know what you're thinking. I know that you do. And I don't even disagree that maybe we should. But I'm just going to tell you, like, we're just dumb at times. And we don't get it. And
most of the time.
Right. If we don't know what you expect, and it goes both ways, all right? But I'm a dude, so I'm telling you how it is from my perspective. But if we don't know what to expect, what you expect, what the expectations are, like we're probably not going to assume the right things.
Rising to the occasion will not be a common occurrence.
Like, if there are things that you as a woman expect me as a man to do in our marriage or in our relationship, and you haven't made a point to tell me what those I'm just telling you. Go ahead and tell them.
We'll take it. We're simple creatures.
Go ahead and tell them. I mean, I'm being jokeful about it, but seriously, communication about expectations in any relationship is huge.
For sure.
And I mean, that's in your relationship between man and woman. This is in relationships on the job. This is really everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a really important thing.
And making those expectations realistic.
Right.
Holy.
Right.
You know, and that's in the words of a wise old crackhead, I have to, in order to deal accordingly with that, I have to keep my acceptance high and my expectations low.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's about having grace,
Yeah.
you know, for other people, but also holding our stuff to a high standard.
Oh, for sure. Sure. But if I'm not willing to share with said other person in the relationship what my expectations are, and then I want to continue to get mad at them, it's like it kind of goes hand in hand with that thing that we do sometimes with boundaries. Like, we set these boundaries in our head without actually vocalizing them,
Right.
and then when that line gets crossed, we lose our crap. But it's like we never told that person in the first place.
Right.
Same thing with expectations.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll hold
Absolutely.
somebody to a standard, family, friends, loved ones, significant other, And then when the expectation's not met, I'm like, well, what the heck?
Yeah.
You know, like why? But it's something I just said internally and never vocalized it.
Right.
So really, I'm the jerk.
Right. Well, and so as your emotional intelligence grows, you're able to have conversations with people,
Yeah.
whoever the relationship is. You can have conversations about this. You know, if someone didn't meet your expectations, you need to let them know and let them know what the expectations were. And then, like you were kind of alluding to as well, if I didn't meet them, like I need to be able to have the opportunity to tell you whether I think that's a realistic expectation or not.
Yeah. No, for sure.
You know,
For sure.
I mean, like if you're expecting me to do something that's really not my skill set, right, in the relationship,
Yeah.
then you're kind of asking for this to fail.
For sure.
Right? Now, if there's something I need to work on to get better because it is an expectation, okay, fine, let's do that. But if I don't know, you can't hold somebody accountable for what you haven't communicated.
No, 100%. And even when you say that's not like when you talk about something not being in your skill set, that's also like such a huge part of putting those expectations on the table in the first place to see if this relationship is even feasible in the first place. And then too, like through this process, we also find other people in our lives that will hold us accountable.
Right.
And they'll be like, especially when it comes to like a relationship with the opposite sex, we'll be like, dude, your expectations are ridiculous.
Right.
Like you got to let go of some of that.
Yeah.
Like why in the world?
Yeah. Yeah. Expectations are huge, you know. So then one of the other questions, did I insist on having things my way or become enraged when I didn't get my way?
I'll take my ball and go home, sir.
Man, we're all guilty of it at some point, you know.
Buddy, don't get, oh man, don't ask my wife. Quite chorish, I get sometimes.
And that last question was, how did I react to my feelings? This is part of that emotional intelligence. Like once you've identified the feelings, once you've defined them and understand them, you now have to start asking yourself, how did I react to that feeling?
Yeah.
Because you're laying the groundwork for the inspection. You're understanding how you react to it again helps you identify the why. And as you begin to mature emotionally, like we kind of said before, like you were saying that the one sponsor had said, you know, you're now going to be able to take that deep breath and say, okay, before I react to this, let me think about this for a minute.
Yeah.
What is the thing causing me to react? Why am I feeling the way I am about this? Why am I having this reaction to this? And is the reaction valid?
Yeah.
You know, that's huge.
No, it is. It is too. And even if and the other cool thing is too is on the other side of it, even if that reaction's poor, like now that we've been in this practice for a little bit of time and we've done a step like this, we now have the opportunity to recognize what we just did and have the knowledge to either A, own up for it, or B, try to do our best to fix it, or both. Because like then we're able to take accountability for it, even if we do fly off the handle because we didn't take those few seconds to realize it. But now we have the right tools in place in order to be like, hey, I shouldn't have acted that way.
Right.
Instead of just being like, whatever, you know, that was because you didn't do what I wanted you to do. You know what I'm saying?
Buddy, how do you know it so well?
It's my life, bro. Buddy, I have come a long ways, but I am not perfect, and nor am I healed.
Yeah. Man.
It's a constant work, and that's the beauty, and that's what you get to see in this step too. Is like it seems like an Everest, you know, but it's like something like I get to do this constant work on myself in order to have a better life, and it's so worth it, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's bared so much fruit in my life, man. It's just it's so amazing.
Yeah,
it's so amazing.
So just real quick recap of what we've got so far. Okay, so we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to split this one into 2 parts. And basically, at the end of the day, when you're working this step, we're going to make a list of our moral inventory. And you're making a list of these things: your resentments, your relationships, self-obsession and self-centeredness, shame and guilt, which we'll get into. These next ones we'll get into in the next episode. Times we felt victimized, fear, and then our assets as well. We get into some assets.
Yeah. See, I told you there's hope at the end. They like you got to sprinkle that little bit of hope in the end, so it just still feels worth it.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap this up, man, we appreciate you guys listening. I know we both hope that that this is helping you in some way. We've been saying it, and I've been getting some feedback, but we'd love to hear from you. If you've got myself or Cooper on Instagram, shoot us a message. If you've got the Ground Zero Podcast on Instagram, if you've got myself or the Ground Zero Podcast on Facebook, shoot us a message there. You can always email us at info@groundzeronc.com. But let us know, man. Let us know if this is impacting you, if this is helping you. Share your story with us. We'd love to hear your story and how the steps have impacted your life. We love hearing about people who were in the gutter and, have found themselves now walking a good life.
Heck yeah, dude.
Those are awesome testimonies that we would love to hear. So stay encouraged. Keep working the steps. Don't give up. Talk to your sponsor. Work these steps. Cooper, you want to pray us out?
I sure do, buddy.
Let's do it, man.
Let's go before the Lord. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for being able to sit here and do this, and we thank you so much for the steps and the program, Father, and we thank you for the people that are listening, and we just ask you to be with them as they go through these or watch somebody else go through them, Father, and just that you encourage them and give them the strength to make that searching and fearless moral inventory, Father, because without you there is no fearlessness, without you there is no bravery, Father, and without you this isn't worth it. And we thank you so much for putting these things in place in our life, and I thank you so much for what they've done in my life and all the fruit they've bared, Father, because if someone asked me where I'd be at with almost 9 years clean, Father, when I first got clean, I would have completely shortchanged myself, and that is no better testament to how much you have worked in my life and how much you're willing to work in everybody else's lives, Father. And it just really charges me up to get to sit here and do this with Andre, my brother, and just to be able to go through this thing together and the bond that it's created between us and also the bond that it's created between us and the people that are listening, Lord. And that it's just such great material that we get and to put it out there, Father. It's just I can't thank you enough for allowing us to be able to sit here and do something like this. And to the person that's still out there struggling, maybe they sat here and listened to this episode and has no idea what we were even talking about, and they're just trying to make it through another day. I ask you to just please be with them and let them know that they do not ever have to use again, Father, and that if there's anything that we could ever do for them, I just ask that you give them the bravery to reach out to anyone, whether it's us, another loved one, or a hotline number, Lord. And we just ask that you be with them. We also ask for you to be with the people that are not listening, Lord, that are still out there in the gutter and are still out there trying to find a better way. And we thank you so much for the position that we're in and all that you do in our lives. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And remember, if you're 5'3"
and 300 pounds,
the taxes shouldn't be paying for your bag
of fudge rounds.
That's a wrap.
For more information about the ministry of Ground Zero, go to our website at groundzeronc.com. To contact us, email us at info@groundzeronc.com.